Does reading feel like a chore to you? Let's talk about some ways to change that. Hi friends, my name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some tips for how to fall back in love with reading in 2026. I feel like struggling to read or falling into reading slumps happens for so many people, especially when there's a lot of pressures placed on us from academia, from our jobs and careers, and just other things in our lives. So many of us were forced to pick up books that we didn't really want to read in school, and that's made so many of us dislike the act of reading. And now there's this pervading feeling of many people wanting to pick up books, but just really struggling and not having either the attention span or really just the desire because they associate reading with these negative things. There's a lot of pressures and burnout that's associated with reading, and just any life changes we have can make it difficult to pick up books and to really want to dive back into that again. I think there's also, in this age of TikTok and shorter form content, there's a lot of attention fatigue, and our attention spans have shortened a lot. So I can understand why it feels like a monumental task or almost impossible to get back into reading. But today I'm going to share some tips that will help you get back into this if you've been wanting to try this and get more into reading books in 2026. So I want to talk about 7 to 10 different tips that I think that can help you get back into reading. These are some things that I think have helped me when I've been struggling and could really help you. But I would say my biggest takeaway with this is to try to be flexible with your reading and be kind to yourself. I think pressuring yourself to read is one of the worst things you can do to get out of that reading slump mindset. And I think it's important to give yourself some grace and be kind to yourself, but also try your best to set some goals. I think having reading goals can be a really great way of getting yourself motivated to read. However, if you find that you're one of those people that starts to feel too much pressure from having goals, let yourself just free mood read and don't put those expectations on yourself. For me personally, I always make a list of reading goals. So that could be things like reading 12 classics in 12 months, but it could be something very simple. You could do something like read 5 books this year. And when you achieve that goal, you'll get a sense of accomplishment and a feeling of satisfaction, which I think can help motivate you to read some more books in the year. So my first tip, in addition to this flexibility, is to lower the bar with what your expectations are. So read short books, read novellas, read things that you've already watched the TV or movie for, because I think that can be a great way to get you back hooked into this. And remember that reading things like graphic novels, manga, listening to audiobooks, all of those things can count. And it's a great way of enjoying these stories. It doesn't all have to be physical reading time, and you don't have to be reading all the classics or things like that for it to really count. I think one of the big reasons why I've been reading as many books as I have in the past few years is because I've become more and more into using audiobooks to listen to stories when I'm driving, when I'm busy doing chores, or when I just don't have the time or the mental capacity to sit down and physically pick up a book. Sometimes our days can be so draining and it can really put you off wanting to read a book physically or even read the ebook. So listening to an audiobook is another alternative version, which I find is really helpful for me. You can also speed them up or slow them down based off of your reading comprehension and find whatever speed is most comfortable for you. For me, I tend to stick around the 1.25 or 1.5 mark listening speed because I think that's where my sweet spot is. So it doesn't feel like it's dragging out, but I am still comprehending the story completely. And that's a great way of getting into more books for the year. So switching formats between audiobooks, physical or hybrid reading, or doing some sort of tandem. Or I know a lot of people really like reading ebooks because that can help them reach their goals and it's not so straining for your eyes if you're reading at night. There are also clippable book lights you can get from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble, from other retailers, which you can use and clip it onto your book while you're reading so that you aren't straining your eyes if you want to read at night. And I think that's a great accessory I have, which I really appreciate and helps me make the most of those nighttime hours for reading, especially since the start of the year has fewer daylight hours. Another tip I would recommend is to change your reading environment. Sometimes if you're just trying to read in the same spot, you can feel slumpy, especially if that's a spot where you read a book you disliked or where you've been struggling to read because you're just not comfortable. So I think that changing your reading spots can be a great way of getting out of a reading slump and trying new places. So you can try like a reading corner, you can try reading at a coffee shop. That's one of my favorite places to read because the aroma of the coffee and all of that gets you in the mood. It helps you stay focused. And you could also do a library date where you take yourself or you go with a friend or a partner to the library and read there. If you have a designated reading spot, I feel like it can be helpful to get you back into reading and really enjoy that. And I think that is a great way of getting back into reading for 2026. So taking these library dates, reading in a reading corner or in a cozy space with like a blanket, sometimes getting a reading drink can help as well, or snacks. Things like that can be great to get you in the mood for reading, making it feel luxurious. You could read in the bath as well. I know some people love to take bubble baths while reading, and that gets them in the mood to pick up books. But all these things can really create a fun atmosphere around reading. You can also read in a bookstore, which is fun. And I think those are all great ways to read more. Also having a designated reading time, so if that's reading when you first wake up or reading when you go to bed, or doing both of these things can be great to get some more reading in. Reading on your commute, especially if you ride the bus, the subway, anything like that can be great. And listening to audiobooks if you drive is fun for your commutes. But I think the biggest thing for reading more is to make it a priority. If you can find a span of time to read for 10, 15, 20, or even 30 minutes a day, you will find that you end up finishing so many more books than you previously did. And you might think you don't have the time for it, but these are all different ways you can just squeeze in a little bit of reading time. You could also host little micro sprints for yourself. So you could set a timer for 30 minutes a day, or if you're just starting out, start with 10 minutes a day or just 5 pages and set a little timer for yourself. Hold yourself accountable, maybe keep a log of the pages you've read or do that timer, and you can prove to yourself that you can read and sit down with a book. Even if it takes you a while to finish that book, reading 10 pages a day, in about a month, you will have probably read a book. So that's definitely a great way to read more, and I think starting out slow and reading 5 or 10 pages a day and then boosting it up to 20 or 30 or reading for a certain period of time can really help boost the amount of books that you're reading in a year. I also think that mood reading is very important, so you want to pick up things that you think you will enjoy. You can pick things up based off of the vibe. If you want something cozy, you can look for like a cozy fantasy. If you want something funny, pick up like a rom-com, or you can pick up a funny memoir, anything like that. I would recommend picking up books that are faster paced because that will keep you engaged and get you into the story. So things like novellas, short stories, things like that can really engage you quickly because they have a limited span of time to tell the story in. So I think those are great recommendations for what kind of books to pick up if you're struggling. And I think instead of telling yourself you need to read X book or Y book, if that's something that you struggle with, just pick up whatever you're in the mood for. If this looks really interesting and you're in the mood for that, pick it up. And if you aren't really feeling the book, or if you're struggling with it, I would recommend DNFing it. That way you can move on to another book, because I think if you struggle through a book and you're really disliking it and you're forcing yourself to finish it, you're not going to be in the reading mood. You're not going to want to pick up another book after that. So just DNF the book. It'll save you time, and it's very important to pick up books that you're enjoying. So if you're not enjoying it, there's no point in spending your time on it. If you find yourself having decision fatigue or having difficulty choosing what kind of book to read, I'd recommend just reading one book at a time. Set one book on your TBR, and that's going to be the next book you read. If you're not in the mood for that, you could pick something else out, but I feel like that way can help you if you're feeling overwhelmed. If it's like with Netflix where you have all these options and you just don't know which one to pick, that can be a really great way to like eliminate the choices, reduce the noise outside, and focus on something. I also recommend that if you don't like to read in silence, you can set the mood with reading music. So I listen to a lot of lo-fi and classical music myself when I'm reading, and I find that helps me to stay focused. Connecting our other senses like our hearing or our sense of smell can be great to enjoy the reading experience. Sometimes I will also light a candle while reading, and that just really puts me in the reading mood, and you can enjoy that aroma and that can help you focus. And also listening to music, as I mentioned. Those are all great ways to help you stay focused and on target. Setting limitations on your apps. So if you use social media a lot or you find yourself scrolling a lot, maybe set a limit for yourself or block those apps while you're reading so you stay focused, and it reduces the temptations you have to go on social media, and you can stay more grounded and focused on what you're actually doing. I think one important thing that I want to mention though is make reading very easy for yourself. So have books with you everywhere. So it could be a physical book, an ebook, an audiobook. Always have an audiobook downloaded, have an ebook ready to go. If that's from your library, I really recommend Libby for ebooks and audiobooks. It's great for that. My library has a pretty large selection, but your library may vary depending on where you are located. but I think having that always ready and accessible to hand makes it just much more likely that you'll actually pick up the book and continue reading. If you have to go searching for a book, or you have to go to the library every single time that you want to pick up a book, you are less likely to read as much just because it's more of a hassle to do so. But making it as easy and accessible for yourself as possible by having like designated library days, so you might go always like one day of the week, like a Saturday or a Sunday, to the library and check out a book for that week. Things like that, getting it into your routine really helps, and also just making it as accessible for yourself as possible helps. So if you make it part of your habits and just continue on with that, you will find that you end up reading more and you want to pick up your books more just because you're surrounded by them. For people who are struggling with scrolling a lot and you want to reduce the amount of time you spend on social media, I think reading is a great thing that you can introduce and switch to do that instead of scrolling. So if you want to make sure that you're not going to scroll or reduce the amount of time that you're scrolling, tell yourself you're going to read one chapter or read a couple of chapters or read for a certain amount of time before you let yourself scroll for the day. I think that's a great way to get some more reading in and to avoid scrolling so much. Or before bedtime, set a timer for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or maybe even just 5 or 10 minutes, that at that time you are going to stop scrolling and you're going to pick up a book and read it or listen to an audiobook, things like that, before your bedtime to create that ritual. I think that reading before bed and reading when you first wake up can be great ways to get your day started. It gets your brain running again at the start of the day, and at the end of the day, it's a great way to unwind and to slow your brain down. I feel like a lot of people have difficulty falling asleep, especially if you are always scrolling. For myself, I find that when I'm in this pattern of scrolling all the time before bed, I have difficulty turning my thoughts off, but when I read, it just makes me drowsy and it helps put me to sleep as well. So reading more like that can actually improve your lifestyle habits as well. That's why I think it's important to make reading a priority, and it's also just important for our attention span, our memory. It exercises so many parts of your brain and really gets you critically thinking about things. So hopefully through using these tips, you've learned a few different possible ways for improving your reading and getting to some more books in 2026. I hope that some of these tips will help you fall back in love with reading. And if you're looking for some recommendations and you don't know what to read, I would recommend checking out some of my recommendation videos. I've made a bunch of different targeted recommendations with things like top 10 standalones to read, top 10 summer romances, and I have a lot of theme videos based off of different genres, types of books, or the vibes or feeling that I got from reading that book, if you're looking for some options or aren't really sure what books to check out. My personal recommendations, if you're really lost and you have no clue where to begin, is to read certain genres that you think you might like. So I would recommend rom-coms a lot because they're really great and easily accessible, especially if you like to watch a lot of rom-com movies. They're great, you can fly through them, and it's a good genre to pick up. If you like fantasy, I would recommend some cozy fantasies. I think they're a great way to have some magic in your life and just add something special to maybe an ordinary day. They're a lot of fun. Maybe I wouldn't recommend this so much if you're newer to reading. I would recommend more like contemporary novels. Things that are very grounded and based in reality will be easy for you to pick up because you can relate more to the characters and feel a lot of empathy for them. But if you're into like crime or thrillers, things like that, I would recommend picking up cozy mysteries, thrillers. All of those tend to be super fast paced and will keep you gripped, especially the thrillers. If you're looking for something faster paced, go with one of those. If you're looking for something that's a little bit slower and you want to more deeply think about what you're reading, maybe pick up a psychological thriller that will really get you thinking, or a cozy mystery. Those can be a lot of fun. These are some great genres that I think can help you get into the reading mindset, and there's some of my favorites in this. Personally, I always really gravitate towards historical fiction, romance, and fantasy. Romance, I think, is just accessible for pretty much anyone. Fantasy is great for people that already love that or already love playing like fantastical video games or watching films or movies like that. And historical fiction is fun for anyone who is really into history and things like that. If you find yourself really gravitating toward that, or if you really enjoyed studying that in school, you might really enjoy reading historical fictions. So these are some great introductory point genres for you to consider if you're looking for some books to pick up. Some easy rapid fire recommendations I have are The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is a cozy fantasy story that's really easy to dive into. I would also recommend an Emily Henry book like Beach Read or People We Meet on Vacation. Personally, I love funny story, and I think that's a very accessible story to new readers. So I would recommend that if you're looking for a contemporary romance. Ali Hazelwood's The Love Hypothesis is super popular, and it's like a grumpy sunshine romance, I believe, which is really fun. For mystery books, I recommend like cozy ones. It can be ones that have like cats on the cover, things like that. I know that Agatha Christie is the queen of mystery, and so many people have enjoyed her books, so that's something to consider. Also, for thrillers, I would recommend trying out Frida McFadden. She seems to be everywhere these days, and so many people absolutely adore her books. A few of her books have actually also been adapted into TV shows or movies, so that could be fun. If you've already seen like The Housemaid, maybe pick up the book by Frida McFadden, and that could be a great way to transition into reading books from your love of film or TV. If you're looking for stories following very rich people and a lot of family drama, I would really recommend the Crazy Rich Asian series. This will keep you so interested, especially if you love those family drama aspects to it. And for another family drama story, I would also recommend Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. I really believe this was talked about a lot on TikTok, and it's got this blend between this family drama and this romance going on in it. It's pretty steamy, so if you enjoy watching that stuff, I think you will really like reading it as well. But those are just some of my recommendations for how to get back into reading in 2026. If you're new to reading or want to read some more in 2026, I challenge you to try out at least one of these different tips and let me know how things go. Do you have any tips that have worked for you in the past? I'd love to know all of your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for watching. And if you liked the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you're doing well, and I'll see you for another video soon. Bye!